Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the place, the platform to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. Heck, your best, most true voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results. Yeah, meet the person of your dreams, make billions of dollars. That's what today's guest is promising. Or maybe not. But the fact of the matter is, we'll work on those last two. But what we do get is a little bit more insight and a little bit more visibility to somebody you very well. If you don't know him directly, you know a lot of people that he has helped. Vinnie Potestivo, branding guru, talent energy cultivator, has helped television networks, has helped television personalities, has helped corporations, in essence, find their brand, find their own difference and uniqueness. And I'm terribly excited because when we talk about energy, it's what drew me to Vinnie. Vinnie, welcome to the show. Appreciate
John,
you,
what an intro. Thank you for that. Yo, by the way, we're gonna meet the big people in our life, like the people that like are the wowzers, and we find out that those people are us. And I'm here to help give you visibility any way that I can. I loved how you talked about helping the networks and helping TV person. Help tends to be free. What you're about to listen to is going to be some free advice. I promise that. And I have some support links to give you throughout the process. So I'm not going to spew some like insight and then not support you with this. But I am here to give you visibility, whether that looks like hearing you, seeing you, knowing you. I mean, there are a lot of complications in this world of being seen and being visible. And it starts, John, with people like you creating stages like this, usually that we build with our voices, that we fill with our followers and listeners and questions and energy, that we substantiate with guests like this. So thanks so much for the invite. I'm sleeves are rolled up, dude. I'm ready.
Oh, by the way, and so are mine. If you happen to be watching, you'll see this. And folks, if you're listening, well, you can just take our words for that. Listen, I find as well. So I remember being drawn to Vinnie, and it's weird that I could feel energy through flat written space. So I started following Vinnie on social media. LinkedIn specifically was where it all began. And we have a link because my man is the curator of I Have a Podcast, and where that all kind of like started to roll. I've worked very closely in the Podmatch network, and so this is where it seemed like roads were starting to connect. But what I was going to ask you right off the bat, which is this: how are you able to draw or share energy in a written space? Because I'll get way to the video and all that stuff later.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember feeling energy from you.
Oh, you can
and with that weird. That's great, but it was what it was. And what drew me. And this is like people typing. So it's like, how are you able to convey a message that actually has warmth or energy or vibe or whatever?
I really appreciate that. I'd love to say part of it is a gift. The other part of it is learned. Some of it is trusting myself as an empath, as a person who's picked up on social cues, as a person who hears the pauses and often gets more out of the in-between words than the actual words that are, used to describe how people feel. There's a technical answer to this question, super quick and brief.
I would love if you share the technical answer.
Oh yeah, I went to college in '95 to what ended up being '98 really. I graduated a little bit early, and I chose my college because they had a computer center with internet. As you do in the late '90s.
Yeah,
I was a computer programmer first and foremost, before a creative, before a casting director, before a talent executive, before a series development executive, before Oscars and Emmys and all that other stuff that sort of I was blessed in. I think I was drawn to computers because I can create space exponentially. We started this interview by drawing attention to creating space. I come
Mm.
from a very, very low income family. I'm the oldest of 6. So doing things with money wasn't necessarily an option for me. I waited till we got a hand-me-down computer, and I started to get really curious. And I liked the computer because I can expand things horizontally, vertically, through dimension. I can create 2 spaces and link them together, which became spreadsheets, and it became Word docs. Long story short.
Oh my God! I keep going.
Long story short, I get the job of a dream when I get to college. I'm a computer center assistant. I'm helping people literally create their papers for work. And I noticed that the theatrical kids, the theater majors and the arts admin majors use a certain font that the business majors and the science majors stayed away from, the nursing majors stayed away from. I became really aware of what their papers actually looked like, and I noticed that was the tone. I think that was godsend to me. I didn't realize what I was learning as I was learning it, but when I got to MTV 3 months later in '99, I made it my job, and it became my job to create TV series. And the way to create a TV series is you write it down on a piece of paper, and that paper gets bopped around from office to office to office, getting approvals and approvals and approvals.
Yeah.
So if I don't create this piece of paper to hold the energy, to hold the promise, to hold the creativity, if I don't have photos, if the margins aren't correct, if the font isn't right, if the print is fugazi and the ink isn't coming out the way I want it to, and I want a really crisp page, because this is really, I'll go the extra distance to get that piece of paper made. That was 20, 25 years ago. I think why I'm so attracted to LinkedIn is a very similar, I'm given a white box. And I can do anything with that versus on Instagram, where I feel it's a gray box and there's a time limit on it and it's all about the feed.
Right.
What I did on LinkedIn was give myself a format that I could show up to, and I don't have to worry about what I say because I trust my format, and I can prove the numbers work as well. And the experiences that I'm getting on LinkedIn are not unique to me. I can replicate them for my clients. So I'm very, very specific about understanding. I'm very intentional in what I do. Therefore, I think it's a little easier for me to dissect what's successful and what's actually working, because there's so much intent in how I structure these pieces, down to the white space in between the words, down to the emojis that I choose to use, down to how I set up my story. And I could really go into it because there is an award-winning strategy to creating a post on LinkedIn that will get reach based on your experience and education. And that's something I know how to actually show people how to do. That's like that's me physically showing you where that is. In fact, maybe I'll give you this link now and you can put it in the show notes so people can go check it out.
100%.
VPE.tv. So that's my company.
Your website, your company,
VPE.tv
exactly.
/gift. And when you go to this page, you'll see a download for a few of my personal posts on LinkedIn that have done really well and how I break them down. And I'm not just taking a stab at this. I broke them down with the LinkedIn executives in LinkedIn. And then I was brought into LinkedIn to teach other companies how to structure posts so that they could be successful as well.
I think that's spectacular. Now, I want to ask a couple of follow-up questions.
Yeah,
First off, so in my mind, I went back almost in horror. So I graduated from Villanova University in 1996, and I say that extremely proudly. Yeah. However, if I told you that I began that quest for that elusive 4-year degree in 1976, you may not be quite as impressed.
Hey, I mean, I know the price has changed,
and then finally getting it right and late on. So ignore the 1996 part. I don't mean ignore the accomplishment. I mean ignore the date. I can relate, but I actually began college 20 years prior. And when you said you were helping people and you're part of the computer department, and the glee and excitement and energy as you're describing it was the exact opposite of what I remember, of such intimidation. Yeah. This massive computer room, massive, and ugly and scary and
loud and buzzing.
And so I got to tell you, where I got chills a second ago was just in regards to the fact that you actually were someone who wanted to help. I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
there were a bunch of other people, but I looked at
Oh
it as
yeah.
so dark and ominous, right? So I'm sure that because if I had found people like you prior, I'm not saying you would have spared me from the I'm going to say 20 years of mayhem and not 20 years straight. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is it's such a public service. I want you
Yeah,
to, and thank you for the gift, by the way. Speaking of
I
gift,
appreciate
that
that.
really matters to our audience and to also me personally. Um, when you realized for the first time, before you went to MTV, when you realized for the first time that you could create magic, so to speak, with fonts, images, you talked about this. The question is this:
Mhm.
that sense of creating a piece of paper that's going to go to a lot of people. And again, then this gets really amplified when you go to MTV, that this goes to a lot of people. What was your mind like when
Oh,
people would change, edit, create, scratch their head? You know what? I don't get this. What was that like, and how did you get past it?
I got to do that. I got to be the person that was the answer to those questions. I didn't have to
Okay.
do it. I don't have to do anything.
Right.
I got to do it. Like
Mhm. Okay.
I was perplexed. I was
Mhm.
curious.
Right. Okay.
I was also getting paid at Wagner. I was getting, $16 an hour in 1996,
Yeah, but
which
you
is
were
like
getting
pretty
paid, and
decent
that's
on
serious,
campus.
right?
So, first and foremost, I also learned to build web pages for people who didn't know how to
Back
build web
then.
pages. I
Oh,
built it for my school because they didn't have one.
mhm.
But you asked this question in a really unique way, and I
Mm.
never put something together until just now, this conversation.
Huh.
I got to college in 95, the buzzing, the humming, the giant servers. I want to say the T1 landlines. We didn't even have those yet, by the way. We had good old coaxial cables
Oh
that
my
were
God.
tying big
When you say
machines
coaxial, I
together.
get physically sick. All right. So anyway, go ahead.
In 1993 is when my family's friend gave me that computer. In 1993, I was still a junior in high school. In
Wow.
1993, my high school didn't have a computer sciences department.
Hmm.
There was no place for us to go. In 1993, I decided I wanted to be in computers. I figured out how to edit using two VCRs on my television because I loved the idea of
Jeez.
creating content that I can take to my family.
Wow.
So like I can't do that on
Hmm.
TV and cable and like the traditional way. You only do that on VHS. So I got really good
Hmm.
at recording something on VHS, and then I would go and edit out the commercials.
Wow.
And then I had something kind of unique that most of my friends
Mhm.
didn't have, and it became like, let's watch 2 episodes of South Park in 40 minutes instead of 60 minutes, and then 20 minutes we can play tag. But that time really mattered to us. I pitched this idea at my
Mhm.
high school to have a TV sciences department. It got approved. It didn't get funded until my senior year, and I got
Mhm.
fidgety. So I called up Staten Island Community Access Channel and I asked if I could. I literally will never forget this question because it's all in the phrasing. I said, "Can I
Mhm.
be your youngest intern in the history of Staten Island TV ever?" And they laughed. I'm a sophomore or junior at this point in high school.
Mhm.
I know that I want to learn how to do this. I became a control room PA where my job was to digitize. So I used to take video from tape and put it on the disc, and then from disc and put it onto
Mhm.
hard drive. And so I understood the transference
Mhm.
process pretty well. And I think that, again, I was looking at ways that I can support the conversation, and I wanted to be in it. So I'm in the control room while the director is calling. I'm seeing the switchboard buttons get pushed.
Mhm.
My job is to make sure the quality of content is being recorded correctly so we can do what we need to afterwards. And I got a glimpse of what development was like.
Mhm.
And that compounded with, do you know what the Landmark Forum is?
Yes.
So I took the Landmark Forum in October of 1998. I graduated college a half semester early and was able to keep my entire scholarship because I had a great relationship with my college. I networked correctly and was able to get them to buy in and believe in what I was doing. I was staff at MTV
Mhm.
before the rest of my classmates graduated. And I worked at Fox News, CNN, and then MTV News. I became like a news person because I could help them figure out who signed releases. I worked on a show on Fox News called Hannity and Combs,
Right.
a show that promotes conversation on both
Mhm.
sides,
Yeah. Oh,
At that
remember that
point,
time of
two
life? Remember
sides,
that
but
time of life?
that.
Um,
And also, like, look, the truth is, like, I'm a gay guy from Staten Island, a little red Republican bubble in a blue state.
Yeah.
I'm a Mets, Jets, Nets fan. My dad is Yankees, Giants, and Knicks. He got all the great teams. I got like the leftovers. There was two options in my household, and I learned how to work with that, knowing that there was more out there. But I learned how to get what I wanted and make the other side happy as well. And that's the key to creativity and growth and getting people to buy into your ideas, getting people to buy into your services. They want you to be successful. They want you to successfully help them. And the way that you show up and the way that you help them.
Right.
Remember, we called this out in the beginning. Help is free. I'm going to help you cross the street. I'm going to help you with this answer. There is no expectation on any level for that to be reciprocal. I'm intentional with my help. Okay. I'm not divisive with my. If I was divisive with my help, then I would make sure that me helping you across the street was going to help me.
Oh,
now, I'm not divisive. I was
going to ask you to define divisive in that context.
Yeah, that's it, right? So, like, I'm not divisive in helping people become the best version of themselves. I'm not divisive in showing people how to write copy, for example, on LinkedIn that I know will reach thousands of people. I post twice on LinkedIn. I comment a couple of comments every single day. I have a very healthy relationship with what I call alternative media. I don't think it's too social. So, like, we can socialize media. You know, that's how you get TV shows made at MTV or Bravo or A&E or any of the networks that were NBC. You would take an idea and you would pop around from office to office getting buy-in. And I'm the talent executive at MTV. So, like, I come into the room, people believe that I have an understanding of what it takes for a star to really resonate and how we're going to be able to, like, what touch points we'll be able to have with this person. But I also show up with, like, Nerds Rope and candy. And that became a big part of my personality at MTV, was singing musical theater and having candy in the room. I was the office that people came to when they wanted to chill out, when they wanted to hang out, when they wanted to review tape on themselves even. They would come in and watch it with me. And then I was like, well, if I'm in the room and you trust me to be in this room, well, then maybe I should create other rooms that are like this. And then I took that concept of helping train talent and made that my job. And being in the room and listening to what's going on in the room, honestly, that gave me every opportunity in life. It was my job to hire the VJs, the hosts on MTV.
Yeah.
I would go down to watch the first taping of the host. Our VJ interviewed Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas, who had a big show. Will turns to the producer and says, this kid's right out of college, this VJ, the guy. I'm the #1 video on the network. Why don't I have my own TV show? And everyone looked at me. And I was like, this is mine to punt? Like, I caught it. So I know exactly the 2 phone calls I have to make something like that happen. And then in an instant, MTV starts working with talent in a way that we're no longer just promoting them and serving the label. We're serving them. And we're now listening to their ideas. And I'm giving them credit. I'm giving them executive producer and TV credit, something they never even got before.
You wouldn't even dream of having, let alone have it, you know?
And you know who noticed? Pepsi and Coke and all of the big brands who realized MTV was a collaboration platform now for celebrities. And what I did was build. I didn't try to get as many people as possible on that network. I built with what I had. Johnny Knoxville, Jackass, Steve-O, Chris Pontius, they all got spinoffs. And there's some SNL skits that make fun of us for, like, you get a show and you get a show.
You get a show and the old Oprah thing.
But the truth is, it's relationships. And people don't trust platforms. They trust people. And I was at MTV for a solid 10 years where I gave talent so much information. Probably if people listening to MTV heard me say this, they'd be like, what? Yeah. Like, I saw some money go down, some bonuses go down on the Osbournes show that when we were doing the deal for Wild 'N Out with Nick Cannon, who I love, and I helped create that show, and he's a brother to me. What an amazing person who built generations of work for people. I'm able to say, hey, when it gets over a 5 in TV, they get $1 million check. So you need to put that in the budget. And they're ching. So, like, supporting talent and getting them set up from the get-go, even though I'm the MTV guy. So you would think the MTV bottom line, right? You would expect, like, the expenses that I create for MTV to be how I keep my job, right? Because the less money we spend, the more money they make.
Right.
But we turned our casting department at MTV into a profit department. And my 2-person team, which ended up being 8 in both coasts and gigantic, created Osbournes and Newlyweds and Punk'd and all the talent-driven programming that changed not only the course of television, but the brand of MTV itself. And being part of that's been gigantic.
I love that in-depth explanation. All right, so first off, a couple questions, which is number one, I got stuck on this, and this is early on in what you were sharing. Number one, you really had to go with the Nets too. So it's Nets, Jets, and Nets.
Oh yeah, I was a glutton.
I'm like, what?
The stories we
you couldn't give yourself the credit for at least like sharing the Knicks or whatever.
I
right?
was the victim. That was my story. And in October of '98, when I learned that I don't have to be less than my father, or I don't have to be a different version of somebody else because I'm just different than other people, and I accepted that, I actually changed the spelling of my name from Vinnie with a Y to Vinnie with an IE, because IE is feminine in some Latin languages.
Right,
so it's a signal, you know, to the community that I'm a part of. But that's intentionality. But I know the Nets, right? Come on.
Right, I was going to say, so I had this block as you're going with all of that gift you share. Now,
at least the Mets, the 86 Met, Carter, Strawberry, like I had
that
Mets,
was great.
You know what I mean?
And I'm a gay guy from Philadelphia, and I wanted to ask you this, which is, as you said, what was the resistance, or was there any? Was it all support when you? By the way you just described it and changing the last two initials of your name, what was that like for you back in the 90s? Were you out then? I was not. That's why I'm asking.
Oh yeah, I was out. I came out to my friends. I came out my junior year in high school, to my family my freshman year in college.
Thank you.
And it was well, I mean, thank you for clearing the path to slowly and all y'all millennials and Gen Zers out there who don't have this necessarily arc of a story through childhood that we have, because of the generations before us, and hopefully that continues to move forward. I just want to tip my hat to that energy that's out there in the universe right now.
But here's the thing that I want to share with you was this, which is thank you, but I'm going to make one minor correction, which is I was not out then. I didn't come out until about the year 2000. Like literally,
by the way, corporately,
thank you, man.
Even in college, 95 to 98, I had to make a decision if I was going to, how I was going to have a family. I had to make a decision on what my voice sounded like day to day if I was going to work in corporate media.
Right.
And I don't want to sugarcoat things. I worked in corporate media. By the way, y'all, I mentioned big news. Fox News,
Pepsi,
before Disney, but before Disney, I don't want to say Disney. I take that. I don't. Keep it in the edit because it's part of the alchemy and my decision making. But before Fox News became what it became, the sensational platform it became, CNN, before the sensation, because what happened is
absolutely
cable is booming in New York. Suddenly TV is happening, and what works for one works for all, and then they realize it doesn't. And now they have to start figuring out how to radically hold on to their audience. Our number one competitor at MTV from 1998 to 2007, when I was there, was ESPN.
Oh, right.
They were ripping the young guys away from MTV. They weren't watching. After the Spice Girls had their moment, if it wasn't Jessica or Britney or Christina, guys weren't watching it. Nope. I did Rock and Jock Music Fest. Anyway, I'm digressing here.
Oh, don't worry about that. I still picture Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick wearing leather jackets for ESPN2 and taking their ties off. So like all of that is like, in terms of the either capitalizing on the MTV like sense of ease or radicalism or whatever.
Cool, right?
Cool, and their sense of here's how we'll make us cool, which is we'll take the suit and tie off and I'll wear a leather jacket.
Yeah. Well, communication back then. Well, communication looked like sense of style.
Yes.
It looked like tone of voice. It looked like the consistency of vocabulary. So communication back then, very, very different. We're definitely all networks looking at each other. I'm watching ESPN2. They greenlit the X Games. So when we had the show at MTV, we had the show at MTV where we took the real worlders and road rulers and we challenged them together.
I remember
now it's called the Challenge.
Road Rules Challenge.
Right? Yeah.
I picture like the Miz being one of the guys that was in one of those things. And look how he's elevated, you know?
Yeah, he was. The Miz. Yeah. The Miz, Theo Von. I mean, there are giant names now that have come out of that friend. Y'all who said, you do reality TV, you're not going to be anything big in life. Look at where that got us, by the way. I'm watching ESPN2. I see the X Games get greenlit. When the challenge needs a host, I know I need to find an athlete. I look at the X Games. I hired Dave Mira, who, God rest his soul, has passed, and became, well, the X Games was like their biggest BMX star, and TJ Lavin, who's hosted the show for, I think, 40 seasons. But TJ was an ally. TJ and I have this awesome episode on my podcast. I have a podcast, little plug. If you know how to listen to podcasts, go listen to mine after. I fought for TJ to be a host because TJ brought my name into rooms that I wasn't in and respected me as a straight male athlete, respected me as a gay male executive, and made me feel empowered by it at a point in time where I was told at MTV not to talk about my sexuality, to change. As my voice drops, and there's some trauma involved in this, but as my voice drops and I suddenly become all Staten Island, you'll realize why there was no Staten Island finagly when I was there, because I was so desperate to make sure that people didn't get lost in it, in that energy. And I kept my head down for a little bit, and I did what everyone asked me to. And I think that I survived at MTV for my first 5 or 6 years because I was willing to be a version of myself that allowed me to play well in everyone else's sandbox, especially as MTV was changing. My last 5 years, my best 5 years, were the biggest version of me ever. Like what I learned, I thought big people want to work with me because I'm small and we're in the room. So like I take up less space. You're the star. That's not how stars get attracted. Stars get attracted to other stars because of the size and the power. I mean,
and the energy.
Look at the galactic scale of what attracts two stars together. Yeah. And why am I choosing to act like a comet, popping in this room and popping out when I can choose to be a star? Some of it was choice. Was I supported in changing my name? I don't know. It was my choice. I chose to surround myself with people who support me. That's a choice. I choose to work with clients who are going to say my name when they win their Emmys and their Oscars, because in your win, if your win becomes my failure, that's not a good feeling for me. And I can ask for that now. See, and you get a version of what you ask for in life. I'll tell you that. You get a version.
I acknowledge this. Here's what else I acknowledge. And I'm going to ask you in terms of all that you shared to point, which is one of these things, which is when you're coming from a combination of a really technical background. So computer programming and the ability to have things on paper, your ability in addition to be able to really uniquely not just position you, but position the idea and that sense of the space that you're creating. What I'm acknowledging is your ability to describe the space, which one of the biggest problems in regards to computer nerds, and as you're talking about recording off of VCRs in those days, and first off, God bless you. But you made it relatable and approachable. So what I guess, I hate asking redundant questions, but I'll risk it, which is, as you're in corporate, and as you're saying, stars are attracting to you based upon your choice to go truer, more authentic, bigger, to use your, you know what I mean? And and pitching to stars these abilities to get executive producer roles and stuff. You've got to sell that through to the corporations. What do you think the gift was? I get why will.i.am would want to be an EP. I get that. But why do you think you were able, or how, better question, but how were you able to sell these ideas through? The expenses, the ability, you know what I mean? How did you get that through?
First off, the sell was on the MTV side, not on the external side. I didn't have to sell what I was able to offer celebrity talent. I positioned myself in the industry as a listener. And I positioned and I gave people time, and I called up every single A&R executive. And also, there's a couple of ways I want to answer this. One is you can't meet everybody if you're everywhere. You have to stay grounded. So like I can't cast 1,000 people in Times Square by running around. I have to stand still on 45th and Broadway with my little clipboard and wait for people to come to me. And that's a practice that I learned. So when I get to MTV, the first thing I start doing is like talent reports, because I need people to know that I understand talent. So here are 20 artists that are about to break this year. How do I know that? Because I just called all the labels. They told me who they're about to release. They told me who they're focusing on. Then I went upstairs to the music lounge in the music department, and I asked them, what videos, what are we thinking? I go down to the celebrity department and I say, these movies are coming out. Which movies are we going to support? Because honestly, we support the movies that pay us. And usually Paramount is owned by MTV. So there's some I realize at this stage, the complex network of talent, it's not always the best who rises. It's those who are the most supported. And how can you get those people to be the most supported? I started doing that at MTV and MTV Films. Put Beyonce in her first film, Carmen, a hip opera, and got to give Beyonce her first mainstream acting role, which is so
remember
cool. Tiny little blip.
I remember. Oh my God, that was so unique and innovative. That's oh my God, cool, right?
And then, but also, I'm surrounding myself with people who are so unique and innovative. That is my MO. Robert Townsend directed Carmen, a hip opera. Robert Townsend, who did Eddie Murphy Raw and Delirious and Five Heartbeats and Hollywood.
Exploded.
Tremendous, right?
Yeah.
So the casting for that role was me, Beyonce, and Robert in the conference room, and we do the lines, and I had a little camera in my hand, and I thought this was my moment to show Robert I'm a videographer, I'm a cinematographer, Robert. Let alone that I'm not the one who got Beyonce in the room. I just had to coordinate that that happening. There's an awesome casting team that I got to work with. But it's that frantic energy that I brought into the room. And Beyonce reads her lines, and then Robert says to me, Vin, I don't need you to move around so much. I can see that she can act, so I don't even need to see that she can act. I just want to look at her eyes. So what I want you to do is, and he takes my hand, and he goes, I want you to be 6 inches from Beyonce's face. And I'm just I'm going to have Beyonce walk across the room, and I want you just to record her eyes, 6 inches from her face the entire time. I'm just looking at eye contact. All right, B, let's go again. All she does is walk into the room. By the way, if you remember Carmen, a hip opera,
I do.
The character gets introduced to all these men through this strong walk that happens where literally every eye turns on her and the gaze becomes the focus of attention. And I beat myself up for taking energy away from an actor during their audition for a screenplay because I felt that's I'm supposed to support and help. I'm not supposed to take away energy, by the way.
Right.
Who am I? I think I could take energy away from Beyonce. What am I drinking? What I
was going to ask you, how did you make her comfortable? Because there has to be.
I didn't. She did.
Okay.
She has agency of her body. She has agency of her choices. He has agency of his body. He didn't talk. He didn't touch her. He didn't take my hand and put it on her face. He didn't touch my hand and bring it over to her.
Right.
He just shared the vision. And now when I tell this story and I'm looking at two top 1% performers and creators in the entire galaxy working together, and it occurred to me that he shared a vision. So all he did was share a vision. He didn't micromanage, didn't give a line read, didn't tell you what to say, what to do, how to say it, what emojis to use, what not to use, what the call to act. None of that. Just shared what the vision was for that moment. And if we could be more conscious of that, I had a client who called and they were going to announce a job posting on LinkedIn. And there was a really cute sort of Schitt's Creek kind of meme that they had that they were going to use because it's a social media manager. It's a fun, position. They asked me, my take on it. And I said, well, you're asking me for a reason, so I'm going to give you the Vinnie Potestivo answer here. The way that we talk about the opportunities that not only we present that we're a part of speaks as much about how we see our work and ourselves as well. So I wouldn't make light of a social media manager who's going to, quote unquote, bring people together and have fun creating content around a great brand. This is a life or change position. And with the right person, this is probably going to be a CEO, CMO, or president of something in the future, just like all of us who were managers or coordinators at one point or another. I promise you, if MTV had excuse me, the talent and series development department didn't exist at MTV until I got there. So I would have never worked for MTV based on what I knew I could do. To be honest, I worked on MTV because it was on Broadway. I wanted to be on Broadway.
Gotcha.
MTV was 1550 on Broadway. It was a good excuse to get to Times Square. I would go and make friends at Annie Get Your Gun that was playing across the street. Tom Wopat from Dukes of Hazzard was in it.
Oh my God, right? Bernadette Peters, if I remember correctly.
Bernadette Peters. By the way, I joke around about this a little bit. My first series becomes Tom Green, We're shooting it in Times Square.
Right.
Our celebrity drops out on a Saturday. We have no celebrity at like 5 o'clock to do a walk-in. I literally go next door to the theater and I knock on the door and I say, "Is Tom Wopat there? I'm Vinny from MTV. I'm a Dukes of Hazzard fan for sure.
Oh my God.
Dukes of Hazzard and Muppet Show had to be done before, that was my childhood. So I just walked across the street and said, "Would you like to come on Tom Green Show on MTV? Because we're looking," and I know who you are. Like, you're an icon, dude. You're in between matinee and your evening show. So I know you're available also. Because like I put that little brain on, and that was like the first talent that I got to book on MTV. Weird, scrappy, resourceful, curious. I also wanted to bring the Broadway community into MTV. I went on to continue doing that with Legally Blonde a lot of other musicals that I got to bring to that platform. Intentional, just highly, highly intentional and extremely curious. But all of this to say it's done with people. It's all networking and people. People make this happen. Not the platforms or the IP or it's all people. Not even the network makes it. The network makes ugats. They make nothing. My Italian vocabulary is a little high on this episode.
Thank God you're bringing the Italian with that comment.
I'm like East Coast. My East Coastness is ramped up on this. Ugats. OOGAHTZZZ. It means like nothing. Ugats. Like, I got nothing from you, these people.
Spell it for me again.
OOGAHTZ. Ugats.
I promise you I'm coming back to this recording.
Please do.
And making certain I know how to spell. Here's what I want to ask you. Now, I think that you feel the passion, the energy, the creativity, the resourcefulness, and you move into corporate where there's often, not to stereotype any company or anyone, where there's often more roadblocks. I came from a career in broadcast ad sales. So what I can often recall was the people part. I love that you say that. The people part was clearly the most fun. It was the rules and regs, the roadblocks. We can, we can't, we won't, should. How were you then able to navigate that sense of resourcefulness, that sense of describing the impact so that corporate that has to go back to their backers, their stakeholders, the corporate board and what have you, to try some of these things before they knew that it was going to succeed?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I have two answers to that because there's two ways to sell a show. One, focus on how brilliant it is and why it's great for us. Or the other way is focus on how brilliant it is and why it's great for another network and why we should hurry up and buy it before that show puts that network, in the number one spot.
Okay.
I worked on, in 2005, Fat Man Scoop, the DJ. You got $100 bill, put your hands up. You got a, Fat Man Scoop and his wife come to me. They recorded a podcast episode. It's called Man and Wife. Now, in 2002, you needed access to like a radio network to be able to get.
Yeah, no one was doing this.
So it was a man and a wife in a recording booth, and I listened to it. And she's a licensed sex ed trainer, and she's educated in sex ed. And I just thought, I didn't laugh at Loveline growing up. Oftentimes, homosexuals were the brunt of the joke on that show. So like I didn't get a lot of intel or energy around that. I thought a married couple who doesn't agree with each other but can agree to disagree talking about sex, to me that just felt like the right show, but it felt sterile in a controlled audio booth. Right. They said, "What do you think about this?" I go, "To be honest, I think it's a little boring and it could be so much better. Like, why don't you record it in your home, like in the bathtub or on your bed where I hear the springs and it feels like I'm in the, and I'm going to transform it. Like, bring me into your space. I don't need you to come into my space. I want to be into your space. So I want the atmospheric sounds." And it clicked. And I said, also, if we have a bed and you guys are sitting on the bed and there's two cameras on you as we're recording, that bed is something that we can tour America with and put it on a comedy club, and Friday nights get couples out talking about sex and relationships and conversations that are hard to have without being able to laugh at what's going on.
You can move a bed.
What a cool, intimate way to have a conversation. And that's the TV show. I went upstairs. You can hear the sort of like the elevator pitches and all of 1515.
Lived them
I go upstairs.
For 30 years
I'm
in
so
broadcast
ready.
Sales. Yep.
Yeah, I'm so ready. I give them the pitch exactly as I just pitched, literally probably exactly as I just pitched it to you. Now, also, unbeknownst to me, there's a shift that's happening in corporate MTV as it often does, and then
Yeah.
the creative changes. So now they're looking a little bit more at not giving the cameras to celebrities. They're looking at giving the cameras to the audience, which becomes Laguna Beach, the Hills, Jersey Shore. And this is an interesting intersection, 2002 to 2006 at MTV. Long story short, I got a pass from original. So I went downstairs to MTV.com. I said, it's a podcast. They need a website. If we build a website, we can get all the ad traffic and all that can be ours. Just upstairs doesn't want the TV show. When you do a deal with a network, we raised $100,000 for the podcast. And then I still had another right to pitch it to MTV before I was allowed to release that show. And then I go upstairs and I go like this. Well, how about that? MTV.com just bought this idea. And, if we don't do this, Fuse, BET, like there's other networks now that are and you don't want YouTube to get this. That was the biggest scare at MTV. You don't want YouTube to get this, right? And we're very salty at YouTube for taking away videos, for creating video on demand. And they also annihilated us during the Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, the Nipplegate debacle.
Oh,
really
sure.
My life.
And I'm a massive fan of both of those celebrities. So
I'm a massive fan of Janet only, not Justin. And I made him cry like a baby on Punk'd. Yeah, you don't do that to a woman and then stand by and then let her take the brunt.
Duly noted.
Sorry.
I still see him as a performer, and I follow him very closely. But I got you. So the crying like a baby part is great. Look.
So your question. So that's one example, right? Where I had to get some funding. I had to get a foot in the door. I use scare tactics. I basically said, if we don't buy it, someone else will. You're going to get in trouble because we own the .com and the domain, but we don't own the IP. I did that same exact thing with Wild 'N Out. And then every once in a while, you get the version of the show where you can come in and how about this? I'm not operating in a vacuum. I'm an MTV employee. So I'm told things like, we have a studio downstairs in Times Square. We only have shoots on we have a live show Monday through Thursday at 3:30, but nothing shoots in the morning and nothing shoots all day on Friday. We need a series that we can shoot in the studio. So I know that they're looking for a studio-based show. That's big intel when you're creating TV
it
shows
sure as hell
versus, but I would go tell everybody that. I wasn't holding on to. So you ask, how do I cast and scale the casting, and how did I get buy-in, and how much selling did I have to do? None. I positioned myself as someone who listened. I answered my phone. I took meetings in my building, which got people in the sacred doors of MTV.
Sure.
I have the best stories of celebrities being like, Christina Milian just said this to me last week. She said, Vin, do you remember when I came to see you at MTV and Janet Jackson was downstairs? So you took me downstairs to meet her? And I was like, wait, what did I do? That sounds like me. Weird that I don't remember introducing those icons together. How does that slip my mind?
Yep.
But that's intention, like come be a guest, come meet who's at the dinner table, and like let's eat together and let's, hopefully profit together. But I was slow. Mandy Moore is a talent. She was dating Wilmer Valderrama. I meet Wilmer Valderrama. He wants to get in TV. Yo Mama happens. I see Wilmer at his show. He was, what's the name? The 70s Show. Yeah. Ashton Kutcher is there. Ashton is a big TV star and a film star, but he's not a producer. He wants to launch a production company, but doesn't have a show. What network do you think gave him that first, show credit
and hence
opportunity?
Punk, right?
Became a big project for it. The version of Punk that y'all saw is not the version of Punk that was pitched. So I even want to point out that you can pitch the show that you want, then the network buys the show that you're selling, but it will change, and it often does, because of people. Because of people. That's why. And what I learned from Ashton, Ashton is so good in the room. What I learned from Ashton was repeating what I just heard in the room. Ashton would be in a room, hear something, 5 minutes later, it was part of his narrative. And I use that in casting. So I would pick up words and vocabulary, and then and I would pick up. So I learned to quickly move on the words that were being used in conversations, and that's how you move projects up. You speak their language. The Big Fat Greek Wedding. The message of Big Fat Greek Wedding is make it his idea. If you want to make it work, make it his idea. I'm really good at making it your idea. Really good.
I
want to be in the alchemy. I want to be in the alchemy of creation. I don't need the credit because I don't want the blame either.
So you want the credit, but you don't want the blame. You don't need the credit, but you don't want the blame. Let me say that
Yeah.
better. You don't want the credit, but you
Right.
don't need the blame. You
Yeah.
create your own company. And I mean, look, the whole deal, I love the fact that in present tense, that you're a branding expert and it's the continuation or the extension of getting individuals known. I love the fact that you call it empower your brand and ignite your career with media that
Yeah.
matters.
It
So,
matters, right? It
right,
matters.
that matters. So, the listening skills that you've conveyed, here's what I really wanted, like in terms of where I wanted to go, which is with you. You don't need the credit, but you need to become more outward facing between this and I have a podcast. But there's this inherent need because somebody's got to do it. So, as I said, you can either hire all the talent that you helped elevate to share your message, or you share it yourself. How did you, first off, make the transition to become more outward facing that people were wishing for from you? How'd you do it?
People, I did it. I literally did it with people exactly as you just described it. I
Mhm.
reached out to the
Okay.
very talent whose
Mhm.
careers I helped put on the map because they're the same exact people who helped me get on the
Okay.
map. And some people, if you know certain celebrities or names or whatever industry you're in, there are leaders in every industry.
Right.
And sometimes people want to sort of slowly work their way up. I know that for me, reaching out to the people who I have a deep committed relationship with over 20 plus years, I knew they would show up for me in a way that people who don't know me or we didn't. What I wanted to do was talk about our decisions, not their decisions. What I'm trying to do also is show people I was in the room when Mandy Moore got the phone call from Disney, when Beyonce was in the audition.
Yep.
Like I was there present, and I can help more people by explaining what was happening in that room, the dynamics of that room, than what's out there. What I learned from Mandy Moore is the power of asking for help, by the way, and showing up on time. Mandy Moore shows up 30 minutes early, and she was, as a 15-year-old female, was not afraid to ask for help. She wasn't afraid to ask for help, though, where even like the 20-year-old guy, young guy, there's that guy energy in the studio and they know everything. They would never ask a question that I saw Mandy ask. And I saw Mandy not just get clarity on what she was asking for. I saw her get a relationship with that executive. I saw her build a friendship with that sound engineer. I saw her get a little bit closer to these people. You give them an opportunity to to make that impact. And I think intentionality has a lot to do with it. And I think that being targeted also, I can be overwhelming and I can be overwhelmed. And that is because I come from a place of abundance. And because I come from a place knowing there's eternal abundance, I often feel like in the moment, I have to crush everything in to happen. I have a rare belief that we're promised tomorrow. And I'm willing to put money on it.
Wait a minute. Say that again.
Promised
Before you continue.
tomorrow.
You are promised tomorrow.
I am promised
And that
tomorrow.
is a rare belief.
And that is my bet. I am going to bet on that. And you know what?
Okay.
I'm going to get this bet right every single day of my life. And the day I don't get it right, I'm not even going to be here to know I got it wrong. Why am I afraid that tomorrow's not coming? Why am I making reactive choices today that I need results today when I can set myself up for a better tomorrow? And I don't feel pressure to post because I'm more supported tomorrow because of what I'm doing today. And I've heard a lot of artists talk about this. Cher is one of the ones that really stands out. She says, when I record a song, when I do a project, if people aren't going to talk about it 5 years from now, I don't do it. I don't do things to be part of the trend. I do things to create the trend. Trendsetters are trend spotters because we're the ones who created the trend in the past, but you don't get paid for being a trendsetter. You get paid for being a trend spotter. You get paid by companies now for spotting trends. So I can't tell you what the future has in store for us, but I know for a fact we can make it. I know we can make it because we're going to be the ones who make the future. But do I know what's happening tomorrow? No, but we're going to make it. I like that idea. I like knowing that I'm stepping in tomorrow like that. And that clarity really helps me show up.
So first off, you don't know how much that actually helped me personally what you just said in regards to that bet. I'm going to make this bet and I'm going to win that bet, and love that. Now, you put up, and I loved your, I'm going to say, complete transparency and authenticity. And look, on the show, folks, we're all about authenticity.
Yeah.
And this comes from a guy that I had a really hard time for a lot of years showing like my legit emotion. The reason it matters is because it took me what feels like the better part of forever to be able to, as you said, Mandy Moore, God bless her, being able to ask for help. You not only shared a social media post, you pinned it on your LinkedIn. So it's not like you didn't want it seen or you wanted to slide past it.
Yeah.
In regards to your ability to go through something and come through the other side, share as little or as much as you choose with that. And I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, that's really a sweet question. I think what resonates for me, it goes back to the very first thing we talked about in this conversation, which is space. And as a leader, the thing that we can do is create space with our voice, fill it with our community to the point where those walls stand up because the leaders of that community are no longer us. That's, to me, what space looks like as a leader. What you're talking about is grace. And before I build that space and before I put my voice in it and before I bring anybody in and before I invite a topic or a single piece of energy into that world, I fill it with grace. And the grace for me is acknowledging that I can be a little overabundant. And you know what? I'm going to forgive myself for that. I'm going to honestly, I'm going to say it's okay. I'm going to be aware of it. And how can I have a better experience in connecting with people now, you know, being dyslexic and thinking the way that I think, and some I got the best compliment last month. So, you know, they were talking about thinking outside the box, and someone was like, "Oh, Vinnie always thinks outside the box." And a comment was made, "Vinnie doesn't have a box. There's no." I was like, "That's not. There's no in the box. There's no. You'll never get a elevator pitch from me. I will never teach you to be a smaller version of yourself or simplify your idea, so that somebody in some other building and some small elevator that's making you feel creepy that you have to kowtow to their energy, you're in the wrong building." And I realized I was in the wrong building at MTV in 2007. I left. Someone moved. There's a book, Who Moved My Cheese. I love this book. I wrote about it in the post. I gave myself a format to show up. Yeah, that post was big for me. That post was, I experienced trauma after a breakup, and I moved to Vermont. A lot of people know me as a New Yorker, and
Broadway.
Yeah, you know, and Vinnie from New York is a big part of my energy, or it was, and it has been a big part of my energy and my identity. It took me a while to figure out that I don't have to live in New York or LA to have those clients because of, you know, where we're at now.
Mobility and technology.
Yeah, like the work from home and like people trust people, not companies. So like I'm beholden to making things happen wherever I am. So with that being said, I give myself grace to be the best person I am. I give myself the space to step into those seats that I've reserved for myself with my little grace sign, let's call it that. And then more importantly, I check back often. It's not about creating space, it's about supporting it. If you want to look at leadership visibility, for example, on LinkedIn, newsletters are a great way to reach audience, but newsletters that focus on new episodes, new conversations, and new guests don't grow as fast or as well or as sustainably as newsletters that support ongoing conversations. Because one version of the newsletter, the priority is the newness of episode, the newness of guest. What a weird
coming soon, so
energy coming soon. By the way, new episode. Who cares? I don't even know you have a podcast. I don't even care. New episode is what is the most fascinating thing about what you're about to put out. Or I dug deeper into visibility and found these 5 pain points in most executives who don't want to be physically visible on a platform. Why? 1, because their religion prohibits them from. 2, because they don't feel safe. 3, because they just don't want to. No is a solid answer. I can go down this list here, and I'm constantly evolving these questions. And I use ChatGPT. I'll say, here are 5 people. What are the pain points that they're having right now? Because I want to. This is how I create TV shows. Now, what's going on in the conversation that we can have? That was a big question in TV. Was like, do we want to own this conversation around this topic? That is why MTV created Teen Mom. because
Right.
when Britney's sister, Jamie Lynn, got pregnant, it was on the cover of every magazine. Every single teen was talking about it. That literally, that cover is what greenlit that series. And that's still a big series for MTV too, because they wanted to own the conversation.
But back then, there was also a ton of finger wagging by the non-teens that were finding that
discourse
highly offensive.
Discourse is always going to be a great way to grow visibility, right? Getting conflicting energies. And so that's, by the way, that's why I'm a Nets Jets Mets. All right, Dad?
Listen, because a lot of people, because you have to be. But here's the thing. I love the fact you bring up these salient points of I needed space, I found myself, I needed inspiration, I took action. I love this. I needed local culture, and now I help create it. I think that's awesome. But here's what I also, from another, like, that you were able to admit that you needed space to grow. And I think one of the reasons it was so important for me to have a conversation with you about that. Look, I would spend the next 15 years talking to you about Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, pop culture freak.
I mean, they're like point references that a lot of people can hold on to. But to your point, there's much bigger topics and way bigger.
Oh, I think they are important, those stories. You know what I mean? I'm only saying it's just a selfish, pressing need that you say, I'll use the initials. I don't care what language anybody uses. I really don't. Inspiration is scary AF because I know it means massive movement is ahead. How do you encourage people? You are still in the midst. This is just a personal opinion, so I won't dump that on you. But the personal opinion is simply no one else has the freedom to be able to judge how long someone else gets to grieve, or to, you know what I mean? So I won't. You get as long or as short as you want, and the answer's all correct. But the massive movement part, in the midst of going through either pressure, fear, getting knocked around, what are steps you have answered repeatedly in the best of ways? It's all about the people. How would you suggest to people that are going through some sort of turbulence, how do they move forward? How do they find the bravery to be authentic rather than the coming soon newsletters? All
right. Well, unfortunately, if you have to tackle the part about you because of external conflicts, that's highly traumatic. Winston Churchill has a great saying, when you're going through hell, just keep going. And that was something that a friend of mine told me as I was going through this breakup last year. It was a long-term relationship of 15 years, and it didn't end well during the relationship, and it certainly didn't end well afterwards. And I did need space, to your point. So what I didn't realize, though, what I learned from that post, I talk about I needed space, so I gave it to myself. And it was pointed out to me in the hundreds of responses that I got that space that I gave myself for healing is the same space that I am now sitting in for growing. What a cool, beautiful thought. And like, I would never have landed on that if I just held on to the grief of going through what I was going through. But to answer your question, though, I have framework that I believe in. I believe in how I write text-based posts on LinkedIn based on previous performance. And also, I don't really care about the performance. I'm going to keep doing what I do because I am in touch with the LinkedIn executives and I'm showing them what like value looks like. I'm going to change the algorithm. I'm not going to be one who succumbs and kowtows to perform a certain way, because let me tell you something. When I get discovered in my moment of visibility,
let me tell you something.
Girl, I'm put my earrings out, roll my sleeves up. I want to be surrounded by the people that I love the most. I want to be talking about the thing that I feel most confident about talking, because I know I can make the biggest amount of impact that way. When my zone of genius and my zone of impact align, I know I can make more impact. Oftentimes that doesn't happen. That's when we know we're in the wrong place, right? Who Moved My Cheese? If y'all haven't read this book, it's a big book. It's also a theme to this post that John's bringing up, partly because I live in Vermont, and Vermont is known for its really good cheese. So some people took the metaphor that way, which is even real. That's really cool that like this turned into so much. I pinned it on my LinkedIn and I pinned it on my Facebook, and then I copied every single comment, sent it into Chat GPT, and I said, here are thousands of conversations with me now. What's the difference in sentiment? How do people see me differently on Facebook versus on LinkedIn? How do I show up differently? So I'm still getting information from this. So yes,
the framework.
I opened up my heart, and I did not mean to write a self-love post. I wasn't thinking, to be really honest, when I wrote the word trauma. It wasn't to trigger curiosity and to try to, I just know this. I have to give you the fact up front. So when I give you a LinkedIn post, there's no, would you like to know? How about I just found out there's no setup other than the friggin' fact. Education supported by the how and the why. How do we get here? Why are we here? Why is this important? And I use experience or education to support that. And earlier, we even asked this question, like when you don't have the experience and you don't have the reputation, or you've never really done these things before, it's not on your resume, how do you move forward? How do you still make these opportunities happen for you? I'll tell you this. I didn't have experience to do what I did at MTV. I was the experience at MTV. And thousands of people who I worked with at that network and networks will tell you, you know what? I mean, we don't really know why people get hired, but it worked. It worked. And I was able to save shows, and I was able to save careers, and I was able to save businesses and families because of my curiosity and how I truly like to show up and support people. And it all comes down to people. And I think that's why, whether this is an exaggeration of my career or the next phase of my career, that's why I think I'm still working with those people I met 30 years ago at the beginning of my career. Those are the celebrities that I'm still supporting to this day, who don't need my help to be famous, but want my help to be relevant, to make more impact in communities. Like I was always drawn to the celebrities who wanted to create community more than audience. I was happy to give you an audience on MTV if you use that audience to build community. Beyonce did that. Ashton did that. Jessica Simpson took that to the bank. She's a billionaire from Macy's. Talk about using chicken tuna of the sea, MTV silly little audience to
billionaire. Right, as they said, right.
And it allows them to be themselves. Mandy Moore, a young girl, comes into music because at that point in the 90s, was the entry point for a lot of young females in entertainment. Britney, Jessica, I can list all the solo females. But obviously she resonated with acting. There's a couple of films that we put her in. I'm not going to take credit for everyone's career here in this call. But
before This Is Us, it's like there was a heck of a lot that was done. It's not like she just fell out of the sky. You know what I mean?
Started her career on Together. A scripted show about a fake boy band. So like but I gave her an opportunity to flex a different muscle. And
people remember that.
And that's important. And like, also like, I worked with a lot of talent who have a main talent, and then the thing I did for them was like what amplified that talent. So like oftentimes I'm not touching your bit. If you're a brilliant CEO and you're already making the money you need to make and you're making the impact you need to make, I'm not going to come around and tell you what products and what your audience looks like. I'm going to find where your zone of genius and your zone of impact align beyond where you currently are. And I'm going to make more impact there for you, carefully, without rocking the boat, but still moving that boat forward. And then I'm a boy from Staten Island, so I love a good, Staten Island ferry reference.
Listen, I can't believe how many references you can slam in to an hour so organically and beautifully and easily. But I'll acknowledge you one more time, which is,
thanks, bud.
It was so important for me to have you in this conversation, because even though you said earlier, I comment on a couple of LinkedIn posts a day, and here's what I remember is that it's the way that you do so. Maybe it's the framework, who knows? But the way that you've personally acknowledged me, I could feel the energy. And when you talk about, embracing being different, that gives me additional courage. That gives me additional whatever, it is,
I
like
see it.
flexing different muscles as the way you described it. Well, you do that for me personally, and I didn't know
Oh, what a
you
gift.
from a can of paint, and you're welcome.
A can
I
of tuna.
literally, people in Northeast Philadelphia line, right? I didn't know you from a can of, I didn't. But I just knew this guy, it felt like he cared that I did well. And again, from that flat surface of a typed LinkedIn page, that's where it began. And that's where I most acknowledge you.
Oh,
Look,
thanks.
you've
I appreciate
you're
that.
very welcome. You gave us a gift at the beginning of the episode, and I am
Yes.
supremely grateful when you said it's vpe.tv/gift. Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. VPE.tv/gift. And here are the 4 to 6 things you'll find there. One, IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, and how we, as regular people, let's call us non-celebrities, non-TV film people, but we are in podcasts. So if you own a podcast, that's intellectual property. You're an executive producer, just like Spielberg is of E.T., and you're entitled to credits. The same exact credit Spielberg has, executive producer, on IMDb. IMDb, trusted by Amazon, high domain authority. So anything that Amazon publishes, Google's going to see. So I'm able to get my wins, my guests, my episodes, my brand out into ChatGPT and Gemini and Google searches just by creating data points that live on IMDb. I give you free tutorial. I did this you mentioned Podmatch. In our tutorial, I show you how I took Alex Sanfilippo's Podmatch podcast.
Way to go, Alex.
Give it IMDb credit as well. If you are looking to get more growth on your podcast, a lot of people think more episodes, better guests, longer episodes will get you there. Here's something you probably haven't done since you launched your podcast. Take the RSS feed, go search new directories that literally came out this month, new networks that came out this month around the globe. There are English-based content channels in Ireland, Australia, Europe, England, India. I mean, I can go on and on about all the places where podcasts now go, that all we need to do is bring our RSS feed over, lock it in, so we get more distribution over content, context over content. These are the ways to grow the brands. And I give you all of that and more with literally step-by-step tutorials and videos and the whole shebang at vpe.tv/gift.
Jeez, that's amazing. What's the best now? Obviously, the gift of having your own company and your own website and being a master brand. So, of course, we're guiding people not just to the gift, but also to vpe.com.
Yeah.
You're all over social. What are the best links that I can have in the bio? You don't have to, I wouldn't torture you. I wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what
yeah.
I meant is, what are the best ones, the best ways to most easily find you?
I do have a website. The website for me is about discoverability, not about transactions. The best place to connect with me, the same open door policy I had at MTV. Come into my office, pitch me. You just had to be in the office to be able to get access to me. That's why I hold my space on LinkedIn the way that I do. And I prefer people to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Right.
I prefer for them to download my newsletter. I prefer for them to DM me. I respond to my DMs very, very quickly, way quicker than an email or a text message. Ask my friends or my clients. I respond, and I even tell them to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's the intention. It's the intention of what we can do together on that platform that makes impact versus emails or other social platforms that I'm on, but mostly for the sake of entertainment and impact versus what I can do on LinkedIn, which is grow leadership visibility. I can grow my reach on social media. I choose not to because I don't want to grow an entertainment reach. I want to grow a leadership reach. So instead of having pillar content that I chop up and then sprinkle on all the social networks, I have a pillar platform that I focus on. And writing a LinkedIn newsletter gets me SEO on all Google and Bing search engines. What I do in that platform gives me visibility out of that platform. I have a Google search result searched for my name. I get more search results from my comments being on other people's threads. That's what's being indexed and scoured by the platforms. So for that reason, I do a lot on LinkedIn because of its reverberance. And I did mention I worked with a lot of news organizations earlier.
Sure.
LinkedIn is a news org. LinkedIn News is a freestanding news org. They do publish a lot of content on LinkedIn. Here's a big give. So if you want to be big on LinkedIn and you make videos and you're looking to get your video seen, there's a video feed. And the way to get submitted to that video feed is manually. And the link to manually submit your LinkedIn videos, if you want it to be featured in the LinkedIn video feed, is buildyourvoice.linkedin.com. So buildyourvoice.linkedin.com. If you go to vpe.tv/gift, I'll have that link there too, because again, there's nothing I give in these interviews and chats that I don't support afterwards for free, without expectation.
That giving is intentional. I love that part. Yeah. Honest to God.
That is.
Vinnie Potestivo, some kid from Staten Island, who just continues to give in a most beautiful way. I told you, it was the energy that you've shared with me is why I needed you here. I am profoundly grateful that you showed up for me today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, and folks, you've just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, watching, sharing, subscribing, paying attention to rock star creators and brands and giving good people like Vinnie Potestivo who show up today and remind us what real authenticity is. John Duffin here from Duffin Media. Have a great rest of the day, and we will certainly talk soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.